Now, the board had to make a decision. They had to choose a director. This early decision was one of the most important to be made.
If you get the wrong director here, the place could crash.
And we got on airplanes and buses and went to see the only two schools that we really considered models. So we actually took field trips. And that's how Tony found David, because he asked the dean of the North Carolina school if he knew of anyone that might be good as head, and he recommended David. So
David Simon was everything needed in a director of a fledgling art school. He was dean of the Manhattan School of Music. He was an artist, but most of all, he was tough.
He moved right down to the school building, which was just about complete when he, after he came on board. And it wasn't totally complete, because he's probably told you the story about the mayor coming there and going through it and seeing boards on the floor.
He came over here once, and I regarded him as kind of funny, and you don't do that to William Donald Schaefer. But I kept up my stuff, and he was going around the building, and there were pieces of lumber lying all around, and he was very unhappy about it. He said, "What about this?" And I said, "Well, I'm just a trombone player. What are you asking me for?" And he got very, may I use the word, pissed.
Early on, the school was, sort of a fragile institution. And there were people within the system that wanted to kind of grab it back and get it folded in and not have it maintain its unique status and qualities. And so we had to fight. And David was a very good fighter, by the way.
Let me point out the big thing that was for me, and that was that the mindset of people in the school system became terribly bureaucratic, and it was very different from the conservatory mindset.
There were a lot of noses out of joint at North Avenue, just because when we went to the conservatory model, personnel was very upset with us because we were bringing in these artists to teach. But as a pre-professional program, it makes much more sense to have professionals doing the teaching, because they're going to be the bridge between the studio experience and the world of the work.
And David brought with him a clear set of expectations for the kind of work that was to be done at the Baltimore School for the Arts.
And look at the people that they brought in to run the various departments. I mean, they were the top people in the arts, performing in visual arts in Baltimore City, and some of them in the nation.
First to sign on was Sylvester Campbell.
For him to have the career that he had in Europe and the United States as an African-American dancer at that time is outstanding. He was really one of the guiding lights for African-Americans to come into the field.
Next, they found Donald Hicken from Center Stage to run the theater department.
Well, the funny part about it is, I thought, like everything else I had done up until that point, I'd be here for a couple years, 2, maybe 3 years. I'd write curriculum and I'd, move on. But it interested me. I met David. We went over and we had coffee at the little lunch counter over on the corner in the pharmacy. It used to be there. And he told me about his idea for the project, and I really liked him, and we connected, and he said to me, "Look, I don't know anything about theater. I'm a music guy, so you can sort of do what you think is best." And so he gave me kind of carte blanche to develop the curriculum. I had a wonderful group of people already teaching with me at Center Stage, so I had the beginnings of a core faculty even, if the hiring process could move forward.
They hired New York artist Carol Bayard to run the visual arts department.
She won Caldecott, I think, illustration awards.
She was in a number of important exhibitions consistently throughout her career. Besides being an illustrator, she was also a painter and a sculptor. She cared about the kids and she was willing to act on it. She was willing to, really give herself.
For music, they had Nathan Carter, the renowned director of the Morgan State Choir.
He was a genius, a musical genius. What he got out of that chorus. And when we started the school, we had about 20 kids, and they sang unaccompanied a Palestrina motet. And right away, he put the school on the map.
Finally, Alfie Brown, host of a weekly television program, The Critic's Place, took the role of Dean of the Arts.
Someone who comes to the School for the Arts that everyone knew because you knew her from television.
The other big decision that was made that was also critical was that it wasn't a vocational school. It was conservatory model arts, but separate and strong academic program with its own integrity.
The academic department was led by Joe Antonsen. He had a PhD in chemistry and fit well in the professional atmosphere of the school.
Okay, yeah, you want to dance, but before you dance, you better learn math. And you better learn, you better do well in your English classes and whatever. Then you can dance. And that's the thing I think that makes the school work.
The school can't exist if the academics don't work, because no parent's going to send them here just for the arts.
For academic as well as arts teachers, David made it clear that an atmosphere of professionalism would reign.
David gave us a tremendous amount of freedom in what we wanted to do, but he really expected results. And the results, that evaluation results might happen 5 seconds after you left the stage after performance. It might happen at any moment along the way.
We would go around and see things that were prepared for presentation. And if we found something, and this made a lot of arts faculty very unhappy, but if we found something that it had some shortcomings, we wouldn't put it on.
In February 1980, the school held its first audition.
This building was being renovated, 77 to 79, just up to the 4th floor. They ran out of money to do the upper floors.
So we had the dance auditions in this school.
Our auditions were held at Center Stage, the theater auditions. The music auditions were held at Peabody. Visual art was at Micah.
Oh, and I wrote up a mountain of material because I was very sensitive about auditions. And I didn't want the judges to be casual.
And only selected like 78 or 79 for that first brave pioneer group.
Baltimore at the time was not cosmopolitan at all. People here, what did we get? We got top 40 music, you got the most popular Hollywood films, and if you wanted to see art, the Walters Art Gallery was still just a small gallery. It was like half the size it was right now. So you were not getting exposed to, and this is before the internet. So if you wanted to see things that were beyond just what you got on commercial TV, you weren't getting it here. So when they first talked about opening the school, we were all dying to get into the school.
People were just sort of chomping at the bit for the school to open. So we started with just an after-school program for those 78 or 79 kids.
There's no way I was skipping, because we went to class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you missed a class, you missed like 50% of your week drawing and painting. If I was sick, I was still coming here.
I did feel like it was special. the building was special. The building was still raw, even when we started full-time that following fall. The top 3 floors hadn't been renovated yet. Classrooms were they still had like plastic tarps and, you know, like exposed drywall. Like things were still very much being built. And I felt like this was a special thing, that not only were the contractors building something special out of this wonderful historic building, but that the teachers, the teaching artists, and we as students were building something special.
When you got down here, you know, even if you didn't get along with somebody, you knew they kind of just accepted you.
We were all artists, you know. The teachers treated us like artists. They didn't treat us like kids or students or black or white or gay or straight. They treated us like artists. That was the expectation. And most of us rose to that expectation.
I remember we had an incident early on in the days of the school where some of the straight kids were feeling a little threatened by some of the gay kids. And there was apparently some talk of there being a confrontation out in Ploy Street, out in the alley. And the word came down that there was some friction among the students. And there were a lot of ways I didn't know exactly how to deal with that. David got the entire student body in the cafeteria, brought everybody down to the cafeteria, and had this town meeting. And he delivered this speech about, you know, respecting people's sexual preference, and in the arts you've got to be a person who is open and accessible and unafraid, and we have to have an atmosphere where that is possible. I mean, he just dissipated all of this tension, approaching it as an artist.
I got to tell you, in the early days of the Baltimore School for the Arts, nobody thought we were going to last very long. When the school first started, there was this feeling that it was selective, elitist, that many of our kids didn't live in Baltimore City. None of our kids were poor. None of our kids, you know, were Title I kids. You know, we had every complaint you could name.
Even Mount Vernon didn't want us here. The Mount Vernon Association, the community association, fought it. They didn't want a Baltimore City public high school in their neighborhood. Once they realized what we were, they began to embrace us and have ever since.
The first broad demonstration of BSA did not come until Sally Michael created Expressions.
I remember Sally Michael coming up with this idea, and as usual, I'm sitting there saying, really?
Slowly, the community of Baltimore could see the good work being done, and they began to get involved. The school had created a buzz, and in turn, drew other talented and devoted people to join the BSA family. Carol Seibel, for example, created Fans in 1983.
So we had the mayor, the head of the symphony, the head of the museum, the head of center stage, all of them were listed as honorary members, which gave it viability. And then I called up people I knew who liked the arts, and we had our first board of about 10 people, and just everything blossomed from there, all the things that we were able to put together over the years.
Performances drew larger and larger audiences. The school grew and expanded. Meanwhile, each graduating class at BSA left to go on to great things, but always leaving a part of them behind.